Joining me now is Barak, founder of Strategic Intelligentsia and the Associate Fellow at the think tank RUSI. Thank you so much for joining us today. So firstly, how significant do you think that visit by Boris Johnson was to Kiev?
I think that the visit by Boris Johnson has been hugely significant because until now, the West's aim has been quite unclear. Has it been to inflict devastating casualties on Russia, or has it been to force Russia and Ukraine to the peace talks? And this incoherence of the West was really reflected by Josep Borrell, the High Commissioner for the EU for Foreign Affairs and Defence and Security Policy. And he said that the reason why the EU was reluctant to provide offensive weapons was because he didn't want to get directly involved in a war. And that reluctance, that ambiguity has led to artificial distinctions between stagnation and escalation, defensive versus offensive weapons, and even sanctions versus purchasing oil and gas. So it's quite ironic that the EU may think, right, we're going to slap Europe on the wrists and not purchase coal, but at the same time paying, since the outset of the war, over 35 billion euros that directly funds Russia's war effort, and it's enabled the ruble to appreciate as opposed to default. And that same ambiguity could be seen when Germany didn't have a decisive position on the Nord Stream 2 pipelines until the breakout of the war. Germany and European states were unwilling to meet their 2 to 3% GDP for defence expenditure that was the NATO requirements. All this fed into the Russian mindset of that there would be no negative consequences if it went into Europe, if it went into Ukraine. And the US and the EU barely responded when Russia invaded Georgia in 2008. And in Crimea, in 2014, there were barely any responses. There was just a slight slap on the wrists with sanctions.
So what do you think Russia's aims are now? Now we see that their invasion, which was meant to be super swift, really isn't going to plan at all.
So the irony is that the Russian incoherence, engaging in the north, targeting Kiev, now shifting to the south, is a result of their initial perception that the EU wouldn't engage at all. Putin wants to reconstitute the Russian Empire, and he sees Ukraine's Black Sea coastline as Russian lands dating from the 18th century. He poses a risk to Poland and the Baltic states, and he wants to expand Russian influence in the Slavic arena of Europe. So to have this arbitrary distinction between defensive versus offensive weapons when there is a broader strategic and security risk that Russia poses to Europe is just crazy.
And just quickly then, we've been reporting about that 8-mile-long convoy heading for the east. What do you think we can expect now from the West as Russia refocuses its efforts on the east?
So as Russia is focusing now on the east, you can expect the West to increasingly become more committed, to focus more on offensive weapons. The question is, as Tobias Ellwood mentioned the other day, will there be an international maritime NATO task force to protect Ukraine's ports? NATO's already said that it's going to have a permanent full-scale military force on its border. There will be increased provisions of offensive weapons. Will Ukrainians receive the MiGs from Poland? Because ultimately you need a conventional combined warfare where the MiGs from the air support ground attacks, and you have air support systems to also protect them. So you're having also increased combat drones, anti-tank missiles. So there is incrementally an increasing array of offensive weapons, but the problem is it hasn't been well thought out at the outset, and that has created Russian escalation as a result.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that analysis. Barak, founder of Strategic Intelligentsia.
Thank you.